So our next panel, and I have to say that this is the panel that I've been most excited about today, is Rethinking Governance in Africa, expanding the role of women in the political sphere. And our esteemed moderator is Her Excellency, Ambassador Janet Oben. She's a High Commissioner of the Republic of Kenya in Rwanda.
Good afternoon, all protocols observed. I am Kenya's High Commissioner to Rwanda. Glad to meet you all. Your Excellency, thank you very much for that very insightful session with you. We've read about you, been really looking forward to have a session one-on-one, and it's really a pleasure that today we got that opportunity to listen to you one-on-one. We are so encouraged as African women. You have mentored us over years without knowing, so we're really, really grateful to have you on board today. We have other panelists I'd like to invite on board. We have His Royal Highness Nnaemeka Achebe. A round of applause. Welcome. His Royal Highness is a traditional ruler from Nigeria, an academician, renowned scholar, and a trailblazer with lots of experience in leadership and governance. Welcome. Our next panelist is President Law Society of Kenya, Faith Odhiambo. Please welcome aboard. A round of applause for her. Faith has just come out of very hotly contested elections in Kenya. She's the second woman president for Law Society of Kenya. Welcome, Faith. And then finally, we have our very own Honorable Sandrine Umutoni, Minister of State for Youth, Arts in Rwanda. Youngest in the team, has achieved many feats in this country. Welcome, Honorable. So those are our guest panelists today. And because of time, we will delve right into our session today, Rethinking Governance in Africa, expanding women's political participation and leadership. We will start with the king. What role can men play to advance the cause of women in governance, in your opinion?
Thank you very much. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, after listening to this amazing keynote speech by President Banda, I'm sort of lost for words, but leadership and politics, and I believe in governance, is what we're talking about here, and is the role that men can play. I think there are a few lessons from the presentation by our president. Her upbringing by her father was very important. And of course, her home partnership was very important. The encouragement or lack of encouragement, and I think she's experienced both of them, starting from lack of encouragement and then encouragement. Then a partnership at the governance level, political level, etc., very important also. In my country, which is where I've experienced, politics is very strange and very peculiar. And we have a common statement saying that politics is dirty. And in Nigeria, it is very, very dirty. And I think that creates a lot of barrier for women to go into politics. In fact, there's some perception that when a woman is active in politics, then there's something wrong with her. there's something wrong with her. There are insinuations. It's, why is that so? Because I think the barriers that are placed there by men. Political meetings are late at night. They are nocturnal events. So a married woman that stays out of her married home till 2 a.m., 3 a.m., name of politics, people begin to say. A friend of mine told the wife to choose either her marriage or politics.
Right.
It's that bad, okay? And let's face it, there's a lot of corruption also. And that creates barriers for women to become actively involved. So for me, the first, the foundation is at home, the kind of upbringing that a woman gets at home. In Onitsha, we embraced education very early, and a lot of our women are all over the place in professions, also in politics and all that. That's very, very important. The support the woman who is actively in the public domain in politics gets from her partner is very important also. Here is our president here. She had 5 children, and yet people believe that being married and getting a child is a barrier to being active in politics and getting to the heights that you can reach. But again, it's a man's thing. So where does it begin to change? First of all, leadership is important, okay? Without, being unfair to my leadership in the country, if you compare what's happening here in Rwanda in terms of the man at the top and over there, where our former president said that the role of his wife is in the other room. Okay,
yeah.
And of course, the other room is the bedroom,
Right?
And she has no contribution to make to governance. And she actually tried. That is Mrs. Buhari. She actually tried to take a strong position and a right position, but then the cabal around the husband packaged her and sent her off to Dubai, where she was until. So the position of the man at the helm is very important. His predecessor, President Jonathan, was more disposed to women participating. Even his wife played a strong role. And I think she was very useful to women coming up. She actively promoted women coming up. Obasanjo also actively promoted, made, what's her name, Okonjo-Iweala, the coordinating minister for finance and a whole lot of other ministries and so on. So leadership is important, but legislation is also important. We need a lot of reforms, legislative reforms to create more opportunities for women, or to create a level playing field for women. When I say more opportunities, I may be misunderstood that you're being patronizing to women. No. The idea is to create a more level playing field where a woman can compete politically on the same level as the other. But I go back to my own place, for instance, my constituency. Up till last year, for 16 years, the Senate seats for my constituency have been held by women. Yes, they're held by women, and competent women, educated women.
Right.
Not to talk about the House of Representatives, where for the half of the period, a woman was there. The State House of Assembly, we have several women representing my constituency. Why is my constituency, or does it appear to be different? Because we embraced education very, very early.
Right.
So these are women whose fathers and mothers already were educated and enlightened and encouraged them to reach their height. I think these are very, very important things, and that's the role that women can play. Finally, I think media is very important. And I think media in Nigeria, I don't know about other countries, again, is controlled by men. Right. And if you take the young lady who was in Tinubu's cabinet and then got thrown out, Betta Edu, highly educated, medical doctor, specialized medical doctor, but also she's very beautiful, she's very pretty, and all of that. And what she did, for which she was savaged by the media, for which the president was forced to sideline her, eventually turned out that other ministers and other heads of department do the same thing. But the media focused on her and savaged her and threw her out. Just like the first and only lady speaker of the House of Representatives we've had, Mrs. Ete, was also savaged by the media. I think these are, but it's not only in Nigeria, because if you take Mrs. Clinton, who ran for president, the scrutiny on her was far more than any other presidential candidate, except maybe Donald Trump.
Right.
So men need to change their mindset. We need to change legislation to create a level playing field for women, to have the self-confidence to participate, knowing that they are not fighting with one hand tied at their back. And I think these are kind of reforms we need to make. And of course, the support they get from their partners and their upbringing at home are also very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, King. Indeed, we, support from home, as Her Excellency mentioned, she had a lot of support from her dad right from when she was very young, support from our partners at the family front. You talked about legislation. I think in Africa, that's one of the areas that we have a problem with, because in most African countries, we have parliaments that are very male-dominated, and they pass laws that are anti-women. I think that's one of the areas that we, as African continent, are having challenges, as well as media that you have highlighted. Probably we have Faith, who has just, come out of a very hotly contested elections in Kenya. I watched your elections throughout. I was still in Kenya at the time. Maybe you can just, mention to us what challenges did you face accessing, political power, getting people to come out and vote for you as opposed to men, seeing as the LSK leadership has been predominantly men. We've just had one woman president over the years, Rachel Omamo. How was that for you?
Good afternoon, everyone. I have to say first, I'm honored. Just listening to you, President, as I was sitting there, we were standing to give you the standing ovation, I was just feeling goosebumps. I leave here inspired for direction in terms of the work that I have to do going forward. So I thank you for that. And just speaking from where His Excellency has said, some of the challenges that you have when you're running for the top seat. I was here last year and Nkuru encouraged me and she told me that, no, come and talk and listen to what challenges others have had. And also talk about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And it was easier said than done, because as His Excellency says, politics is done at night. You will attend all parties, you will attend all events, you must be formal, you must be informal, you must be tough but soft, you must be aggressive but seem meek. The contradictions were so much. Today I can wear all black because I'm no longer in election mood. But during that period, I had to change all my comfort zones. Because when you're looking at the electorate, you have to cut and look at who am I attracting? I have the younger ones who are looking up to me that I'm their pillar of, hope. A younger leader is coming up. So they want someone they can connect to. Then you have the men who want someone who is aggressive and strong and bold and has money as well, Your Excellency. Politics is about money. So perception is also quite important. And then you have the older men and women who want someone who shows respect, someone who can listen, someone who is humble, and women who also, unfortunately, a bit judgmental. So you have to also change. I had to change my dress as well. So I asked myself that question after I'd come here for the last conference. And as I sat with my friends and we're making that decision, that are we serious that we want to get this? And we're like, we're serious. We want to get the presidency. So the next thing is, are you going to do all that it takes to get the presidency? So you're like, okay. Are we ready to do all that it takes to get the presidency? And remember, you haven't had this conversation with your spouse, because he needs to be part and parcel of this conversation, because he has to cover up for you when you're not at home with the child, when you're not physically present, and also to understand why you're not at home past midnight. You're still out somewhere when he calls you, he's hearing loud music. Because you're hanging out with the electorate. And media was also quite important. I think the reason why maybe also Ambassador watched me was that we got a lot of media coverage. And I think these speaking engagements really helped, because I was able to bring out my raw during our debates. So every single debate, national debate that we had televised, helped me, and men who hadn't spoken to me or reached out to me were able to identify and say, well, I can see the fire. I can see why she can be my president. And the challenges that I also had was age. Congratulations, I hear you're the youngest in the panel. Um, you know, something was that challenged me was that for the first time I wished I was older. Now, normally to qualify to vie for president, you have to be 15 years in practice in Kenya, or you have served previously in council. But because I was a woman and I was not yet 15 years, it was a problem. And it was a problem that I had to address every single time. And so since I couldn't grow older, I had to show up for it in terms of my decisiveness in decision making, in how I speak, in how I address people. And it's like you have to be 100% all the time. And that's the question of expectation of women is higher than the expectation of the men. So I would attend, let's say my biggest competitor was a man, of course, and he was more wealthy than I was. But the beauty is that someone taught me this in politics. Either you have a lot of money to spoil, or you're such a nuisance on the ground, people love you so much that there's nothing they can do about it. So I was such a nuisance in terms of my electorate. People loved me so much that there was nothing they could do about it. And so even as much as my competitor could outspend me, he couldn't make the people love him as much as they loved me. And would attend certain events, and he could come dressed like he's just walked out of his room, you know. You had to dress for every single occasion, because I realized that also the women were watching. How does she dress for an evening event? How does she dress for a cocktail? How does she dress when she's in court? How does she dress when she's in these particular events? And you had to also ensure that your speeches were on point, any interventions that we were making, whether speaking to the media or everywhere, you had to be quite careful. So you're always like on pins and needles. So I say the challenge that a lot of women also have and will continue to have is that unless you also have other women to hold your hand. Rachel Omamo was the first female president. It's over 21 years. And so the question in the legal profession was that, are we really ready for another woman? It's an interesting time in our country that people feel we have a very strong president who is also charismatic. And LSK is always known to be not really opposition, but the voice of the rule of law. And so people were like, you feel that with a man, you know? A man will be able to tell, if the head of state shouts at her, she will crumble, she'll cry. We need somebody who can stand strong. And when the head of state says this, she's able to go back to the media and respond to whatever issues he raises, and she can meet him and tell him off. You know, that's the perception that is there. So the challenge that I realized that I tried to reach out and get the former president, because she also was a trailblazer. She ended up being an ambassador. Then later she became the Minister of Defense before Minister of Lands. So she was quite a trailblazer, and also the things that she did during her tenure particularly kicking her uncle out of office for corruption. Her uncle was the Chief Justice then. So doing something like that is quite amazing, that you stood out for integrity and principle, irrespective of relation. And so I tried to reach out to her, but I think because of the change of politics in our country, she didn't want to be seen as the figure behind me pushing me, because probably it would have been seen that I had a political backer behind me. But the challenge of not having also other women putting a ladder for you is that you have to guess along the way and just hope that you're doing the right thing. And I believe in that thing of getting the people to love you, because at the hardest points, because propaganda comes a lot in politics, and sometimes it spirals and you don't know how to respond or how to react. Because you don't know, if I say this, how will be the trigger reaction? If I don't say it, what will be the trigger reaction? And then who are the best people to respond in that particular situation? And so at those difficult times, it's those people, the people who love you, like President said that when they were not going to swear her in the 72 hours, if it weren't for those. And because when the propaganda is spiraling out of order and you're thinking you have just a few hours probably to the election, and you're like, are we going to really do this? They give you that courage to maintain that somber face of, we're going to win these people and we're going to win it big. And so I really thank my supporters, because even at the last hour, when we were afraid of the corruption and possibility of our votes being stolen and things like that, they held strong. And, it gave me that sort of encouragement to continue pushing on. So I say, without a doubt, some of the lessons that I've had here actually comes to play, because I realized that I thought LSK was something small, but I realized you're now playing sort of with the big boys. People are looking at you as a national competitor for a national seat.
True.
They're like, this person can unseat me if I don't take care. So yeah, that was sort of the journey.
Wow. Thank you. Your story, Faith, highlights the need for us women to hold each other's hands, because clearly you got very little support from women, unfortunately, but you made it through. So that's quite encouraging. Honorable Sandrine, welcome. Before I ask you anything, I think we as a team here or as a group must applaud Rwanda for the contribution they have made in terms of including women in governance and leadership positions. Rwanda has taken the lead not just in the continent, but across worldwide. You have about 61% of women representation in parliament. So what better place to hold this conference than Rwanda? In your opinion, what changes around women political participation have you seen over the years? Rwanda being taking the lead, and how has that impacted you?
Thank you so much, and greetings to my co-panelists, Your Excellency and Your Royal Highness. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I hope everybody can hear me. I want to say, first of all, that it is a true honor to be here today representing my government, but also as someone who remembers the genocide perpetrated against the Tutsis. I remember in 1994, the political decision that was made by the leadership to not exclude women. And the reason that was that in the 90s, we all remember our mothers, our aunties going to the front. And some of them were actually physically fighting alongside their brothers, while others were actually pulling political power to rally more support for the liberation of Rwanda. So in the post-1994, the current president, who at the time was the VP of the country, made a very clear decision and said, we can't now have secured the country and just say thank you to half the population who helped us get to this point today. So he said it's only logical that we continue this journey towards true economic development, true equality. But honestly, how do we really create a new society where every person is dignified? So the decision was very clear from the get-go. We are not going to exclude women. Now, if you think about it, it was 30 years ago. So all the leaders that we have today were in the 30s. I'm actually older than them today. To see that they were in the early 30s, and again, they were saying, we are young, some of us are women, we are going to carry on this legacy for the remaining of the history of this country, to make sure that it doesn't matter how young you are, if you do have ideas, if you're willing to wake up every morning and face all the confrontation or all the backlash, because we know we still evolve in a region where Rwanda is constantly, criticized for different reasons. The clarity of the vision was there in the 90s. It was there in 1994. It is present today in 2024, and we can see today in the numbers of women in a position of leadership. But what I also want to highlight is today, through the ministry that I represent, the Ministry of Youth and Arts, we are passing on the same message to our young people. Rwanda is a very youthful country, just like the rest of the continent. We have more than 60% below the ages of 30 years old. We are telling them, you come from a history of people who were not too young to fight, who were not women, and for that reason, they couldn't go to the front as well. They could actually hold an office. And what you don't know when you join office, you will learn along the way. So there comes in the importance of mentorship. And a few of the participants mentioned it before we began the panel today. It is very important for us who are in these positions to make sure that we identify other women around us, other young people around us, and we pass on this mentorship, that we pass on the belief that they are good enough to lead, they are worthy enough. And again, what they don't know when they begin on the first day, they will learn as we go. If you wait to have all the knowledge, when do you start really? So this is something that is very dear to us in Rwanda. It is something that we do want to share with the rest of the world, and perhaps to create a bridge with what His Royal Highness was mentioning earlier about the power of traditions. I believe that in Rwanda, what helped us come back from the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi was that we took a look backwards and looked at pre-colonial traditions and practices. So these pre-colonial practices were the one that actually helped us get to where we are today, because we had to face an enormous crisis in terms of regarding justice. We had to come up with a traditional way of dealing with the cases of the genocide. We had to come up with an economic way of uplifting people out of poverty. We also had to, again, come back to pre-colonial reality that we had, where women could lead alongside the kings. Actually, in our history, every king was ruling with his mother, the queen mother. It was a duo that you couldn't separate. So in our history, again, we do have this knowledge that women can be as powerful as the men, and that one cannot lead without the other. So in today's Rwanda, it's not about proving that women are better than, it's actually proving that without one or the other, we can't move forward. It's really about complementarity. And that is the type of political governance that we are pushing forward, and that we are also teaching our young men. If I can. Thank you. And back to the question of mentorship in this line of political governance, I believe that it's very important to question the insecurities that we still notice around us. Why are some, because not all of them are anti-women. I believe we need to question the one who still believe that women should be only limited to certain powers. So how do we question these insecurities? How do we build confidence within our young men so that they understand that they can actually go further away in life if their sisters are moving along with them? And same for the women, that it's okay to be better in math than your male colleague. It doesn't diminish you or make you less marriable, because we've heard this comment in some of the sessions we've had with young adults in the past, where young women would tell us that if I do too well, then boys won't like me, things like that. So again, how do you stand up in your power, stand up in your truth, and know that if you've been gifted with certain abilities, if certain leadership skills, it is your duty to embrace them. And those who are meant to be around you will follow you. So it's not about being popular. It's and allow me to disagree with you just quickly. It's, to me, I feel like it's beyond being loved, because love can come and go. Today, you are more popular than me, people will love you more than me. The next day, someone else will be more popular than you. I believe that what we need to really cultivate within our young women and our young men is respect. Work hard. Let your work speak for itself. Stand up again for what is right. And where people may be moving in and out of love or emotions, because what you see is not always the reality on the ground, but hard work is what really speaks. And as Your Excellency, you were mentioning earlier, you showed again that you believed and you put the work behind all the empowerment you wanted to do for the communities in your home country. And I believe that's where the respect comes in. And that's the respect that allows you to go through the many fires that will come your way. Because again, being in certain positions attracts a lot of attention to you. We were talking about earlier the competitions that also exist among women, because we have this idea that they are not enough room for all of us, and if she's there, that means I'm not. No, she's there, she can help you get over there. So again, how do we build this type of mentorship to make our young people, young women, understand that what you do not know today, you will learn along the way, and then what you learn, you need to pass it on to the next generation. That is the only way we can all grow together. I hope that has responded to your question.
Absolutely, thank you very much. Indeed, I mean, it's been here for, I've been here for 2-3 months since I reported, and one of the things that has really amazed me is the remarkable progress that Rwanda has made since 1994, and that's something that is really many African countries should look at, because you only started in 1994. And it's not just in women leadership, it's in economic growth. So Rwanda has made serious strides. I've had chance to meet a few young Rwandans who have paid me courtesy visits in the office, and you can see they're students, but patriotism and is ingrained in them ever since they're young, and that's something that I've picked up. So really admirable for your country. Your Majesty, I have a question for you as a traditional ruler. I'm sure traditional rulers all over Africa have a role to play in governance and leadership. In your opinion, how can you leverage your position as a traditional ruler to address women leadership in participation?
Thank you very much. You're speaking about Africa, of course, there are different cultures, different practices, and I'll speak about my own group. I'm an Igbo from
Right.
Southeast Nigeria.
Okay.
And if I go back in history, 1928, in the colonial times, the colonial government imposed taxes in the northern Nigeria, and they complied and they paid the taxes. They imposed taxes in southwest Nigeria. They complied after some resistance and paid. And when it came to eastern Nigeria, which is my own part, it is the women who refused that taxes should be imposed. And they call it the famous Aba Women's Riot. It wasn't a riot, it was just a resistance and a protestation. And women from different towns gathered in Aba, and they crippled the government for about 2 weeks. That you cannot tax me if I don't have a role in government. So as a reflection of the spirit of the typical Igbo woman, which is grown up from our culture and so on. Now, in Onitsha, which is my own domain, Chike Obia spoke earlier on the panel. I referred to the Omu institution in Onitsha. The Omu is the queen in my community, but she's not the wife of the king. She's parallel to the king. So the Omu emerges as the leader of the women, just as the king emerges as the leader of the men. And in the traditional council meeting, she sits on the left of the king, and basically partakes in the governance. But we have a parallel sort of governance where she leads the women in their own responsibilities, and the men, of course. Now, this institution was stopped about over 100 years ago because there was a disagreement between the Omu and the king. And since I came onto the throne, I've been trying to reestablish it. And it's up to the women to come up with the Omu. And they keep saying, well, give us some time, give us some time. So that's a reflection of my own attitude. But today, in my community, we have a massive community development program with various arms on leadership development, entrepreneurship development, ICT, enterprise development, our public health system, our educational system, basically focused on secondary school level into university, and then, of course, we have our own internal security. But back on leadership development, we have a section of it which is called the Women Development Program, which is run by our professional women. Professional women, former director of Central Bank is, the leader on the ground. We have our women who are academics, but they run that program with many facets. One is to build up the level of wealth amongst our women at the local level, with loans, the businesses and all that. Get them ICT compliant. They can do their business electronically and all that. But on the younger girls is to give them a sense of belief in themselves that they can achieve anything they want to do, they want to achieve in their life. And it's a massive program, which is working out very well. So today, in literally all our activities, all our programs, whether it's the programs we run, the ICT, and the entrepreneurship, there are more women participating than the men, or more girls than the boys. It's a problem for us because now the boys themselves need extra support to get to that place. But even in the exam results, the women come out much stronger because in the families we create a level playing field. I grew up. I came from a family of 9, 4 boys and 5 girls. I came first, then came the 5 girls before the 3 boys. So I was brought up just like the girls themselves.
Right.
We're all brought up together. We shared in domestic duties, etc., etc. Yeah. And today my sister, because my father will always say, whatever you want to do, consult your sister, which is the eldest of the girls. So today she runs the family. Her parents are gone. So myself, my cabinet, my community have a focus on youth development. And within that youth development focus, a particular focus on our women's folk to get them where they want to get to achieve what they want to achieve. And at the State Council of Traditional Rulers, where I'm chairman, I espouse the same message, and we share examples, and they see what I'm doing in my community. Many other communities are doing the same thing. And at the regional level, comprising the 5 Southeast states, where I used to be the chairman, I'm now the patron of, we share knowledge also. So it's a struggle, of course, because different people have different perceptions. Some will hide under culture. And I claim, and I tell everybody, and I make it clear to my people, culture is not static. It's not frozen in stone. It's not cast in stone. Culture must be dynamic to reflect the yearnings of the people at a given time. And that's what we're doing. And it works for us. There's a long way to go, particularly in governance.
Yeah.
The women themselves have to believe in themselves.
Right.
Because sometimes, for instance, I interview women lawyers for a job when I was in the companies. They want to come in as company secretaries and so on. So why don't you go into litigation? It's too difficult. Why is it difficult? Because there are barriers set by men. Okay, so we've got to attack those barriers everywhere, at the professional level, at the political level, legislation, mindset change, and all of that. But I'm hopeful. And I hope that with all the effort put together, we're going to get more women into leadership positions like Okonjo Iweala, etc. There shouldn't be exceptions, you know. And it's not because we're patronizing them. It's because there's a level playing field where, you know, I mean, they're there by their own abilities. At the corporate level, it's happening, but we need more of that in politics. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the most important pick there is what you said about culture should be dynamic, it should not be static. I come from a community down the coast in Taita Taveta in Kenya. We also have cultural leaders. They're not as organized as you are, but I know that all political leaders, once you decide you're vying for position, you've got to go and sit with them. So they actually, and if they decide to back one candidate, then that candidate sails through. So that's a critical role that cultural leaders or traditional leaders play. And once they get to understand that culture should not sit in one place, you keep changing and accept women leadership. I think that would be key. We haven't gotten there yet, but I think we're making progress. Your Excellency, I would want to just ask you one question because you've been there, experienced leadership, political leadership, fought many battles. We are still, as women in Africa, fighting those battles. We have different constitutions that are more, friendly to women now. Like in Kenya, we have our constitution speaks about two-third gender rule, but it's not yet been actualized. What, in your opinion, do you think as women we need to do to get there? Because we are making effort. Everyone is trying to have women on board, but we are not quite, getting there, even when it is enshrined in the Constitution. What do you think, in your opinion, we should be doing differently to achieve that?
Thank you very much. I think for me, what needs to happen first is for us women ourselves decide that we're going to fight, and we're going to fight together.
Right.
I remember when we went to Beijing, I have never seen such fire in women like I saw that time. And at that time, our governments were not friendly to gender equality. But we fought all the same, and we united, we held hands. We had a pre-Beijing conference in Africa, in Senegal, traveled to Beijing, braved the rain, because we just wanted to come up with a platform for action.
Right.
I don't see that fire now. I don't see that fire now. And my appeal is that we must continue to be each other's keeper. And we who are this age must offer our shoulder for younger women to stand on. We must move our agenda. We must be very clear, articulate our issues, and present them to our men who are prepared to listen, in my opinion, depending on what approach we take. But on this continent of Africa, aren't we proud to be in Rwanda, which has the highest representation even in parliament? And yet on this same continent, in other countries, a woman just declares she wants to stand, they will beat her up, strip her naked. So what we need to do is also lobby. Our governments, our leaders must have the political will, but must learn from other countries that are doing well. This is the country with the highest representation in the world. Yes, so why must we have other presidents who frown at that and who don't want to reach parity? I mean, it's just a question of looking at the team you have. Appoint 10 women and 10 men. What's difficult about that? But you find that all the time it's extremely difficult. And the biggest problem sometimes is that women, we are our own enemies. We don't stand for one another. I was the woman who spoke at President Mandela's funeral. I think for me, it is the best speech I've given in my life, because when I went to South Africa, I wasn't prepared that I was going to speak. They had taken me off the list, and it was a fellow woman foreign minister in South Africa who had removed me. So I went back home. So while in my country, some people protested, fellow women protested and said, but if she's the chair of SADC, she will come and speak. So they had to fly me in the night. So because I didn't have time to write a speech, I was scribbling notes on the plane. It is the best speech I gave. Do you know what? The only people in Malawi who mocked at me and the speech were my fellow women.
Right.
So that is the biggest problem that we have. So we must continue to lobby our governments and name and shame. And sometimes the presidents, if they know that another president is doing well, when you mention it to him, they feel ashamed. And some of us, for example, those of us who have been leaders, we have the key to some countries where other people can't go. 2 years ago, I was requested by NDI to go and speak to President Buhari. Because at that moment, the presentation in Parliament in Nigeria was 6%. And he opened his door. I went, I was with Professor Chris of Fumio of NDI. He opened the door for us. We had a very good discussion. And indeed, he said yes, and the Minister of Women was there, the Attorney General was there, the Minister of Finance was there. A bill was sent to Parliament. It is parliamentarians who threw it out. So at least the president tried. Now this year, I had the privilege to lead the observer team, the American observer team, NDI and IRI, to the Nigerian elections. I said, now I'm on the scene. Now I'll see what will happen. Maybe we might move from the 6%. We went backwards. So Nigeria, for example, is a country that has women in key international organizations, and we're very proud of them. World Trade Organization and so on. Powerful women. I don't know what happens in Parliament. I've spoken to my brother, President Obasanjo. What is it? What is it? Why is it that any other place you can appoint us but except Parliament? When things like that happen, we who can speak to leaders must be used by the younger generation that are fighting to get to Parliament. You must use us, and we must not be selfish. We must be available. We must be accountable to younger women. We didn't have role models, but you have. And so it is selfish for us to close our door because we've made it and we are here. We must be available. So I think to answer your question, there's a lot that can be done.
Right.
Kenyan women must be able to call me and say, can you please go and meet President Ruto? Right. I have been there to meet President Kenyatta about FGM. Yes, and fruitful discussions. So we must hold hands. We must be each other's keeper. We must support one another, but we must call out our presidents and our governments. They are doing well, but they can do more.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. You are a true picture of, you say what you mean and you mean what you say. I met you last night for about 45 minutes. And by the time I was going home, I knew I had a mentor who can hold my hand. You might not have realized it, but the way you conducted yourself to me, I knew that I had someone I can always look up to. Faith, on to you. Just picking up from what Her Excellency has said, and we had this conversation before we started this panel. Our two sisters spoke. One was of the opinion that women do not hold each other's hands, and the other was advocating for the fact that this can be done. And for me, I think that's really an issue that us as women should really talk about and be honest. Because I think that it's the ideal, but it's not real. We talk about, yes, we are going to have women mentors, we're going to hold each other's hands, but the real reality on the ground is different. Faith, what do you think? Are we really ready as women to hold each other, to prompt each other up? Is it something that can be achieved given the nature of women? I don't know. And two, just to talk about the 2/3 gender role in Kenya, what is your opinion? Because we have not yet been able to actualize that. What can Kenya, for example, do? Maybe other countries can learn from us because we already have it enshrined in our constitution, but it's been complicated to achieve. What are your views? What can be done to achieve the 2/3 gender role in Kenya? Thank you.
I'd want to pick up from the fact that in terms of mentorship and holding each other's hand, I think it's quite possible. This African soft power is just a good example of it is possible. It's being done and it's working. Because if it wasn't for this session, I wouldn't have met the amazing president who has inspired beyond words. And something that I do is that I think also makes a difference. I do the kind of mentorship that I can in my country. I do mentorship for younger lawyers who are coming after me.
Right.
The challenge that you realize is that even as His Excellency has talked about why are women not doing litigation, it's always a series of different things why. And unless you have someone else who is holding your hand and explaining to you the possibilities of how you can work around it, then you will not be able to understand ways that it can be possible.
Yeah.
So I mentor a lot.
Okay.
I have mentors who've mentored me in different spaces. I'm in academia as well.
Yeah.
So that has really helped. I know we may be out of time, but let me, I'll try and
Wrap up. Okay.
about it. Mentorship has to be, there's the structured and unstructured, but the thing I would say that maybe we should start a buddy system, and that after such forums, we're able to share each other's numbers and details, and how can we reach each other around the globe when I'm somewhere where I need assistance, where I need support. And I love the fact that the president, she has said that she is ready to come and speak to President Ruto, because my personal mission statement is to fight as much as possible to ensure we have implementation of the 2/3 gender when I leave office.
Thank you.
I have already spoken to the Minister of the CS of Gender and the CS advisor to government. And the reality is the challenge that we're having right now in our country, people are focused on changing the constitution for political selfishness, but no one is talking about implementation of the 2/3 gender. In my same council, we petitioned through the Chief Justice to dissolve Parliament because they didn't meet the 2/3 gender.
Thank you.
I can tell you for like a week, Parliament was in a frenzy. Because that time they had just snipped the budget of the Chief Justice. They had annoyed President Uhuru. So they were so scared that he could actually dissolve Parliament.
Thank you.
And so if there's a time, particularly now that we are talking about changing the constitution and everyone is haggling, I think if there's a time that president would want to take that invite, you come and meet our president, it is now.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
the
you, Faith.
political will that matters in our
you, Faith.
country.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you very much, Faith. Maybe I can just very quickly mention something that I had a discussion with Honorable Sandrine before we came on board. She said that they are at a stage where, yes, they have achieved, gender, but now they want to ensure that those women who are being elected or appointed in those positions are actually have the capacity to make and to come up with decisions and policies that are beneficial to the people of Rwanda. So I'm just saying that on your behalf. Thank you so much. We have come to an end. We wish we could, continue. This is so enlightening, but time is up. Thank you so much for the organizers. Thank you so much for the panelists. Next year we'll, I'm sure, have another session and pick up from where we left. But I would ask that, let's continue to engage in different other forums other than this. Thank you very much, and God bless.